Hey guys, welcome back. How y'all feeling?
Hey man, everything is well.
Man,
Awesome.
listen, I can't. The word of the Lord is right. That's all I know.
It's right, Doc.
So, we started this conversation talking about the business of church, and one of the things we wanted to continue along this journey is kind of the second idea. In terms of what are the business skills that pastors need in the 21st century. What are the things that come to mind? There are a number of things that come to mind, but for me, when I think about business skills pastors need for the 21st century, um, is the ability to know how to maneuver in and out of the social services arena. Because when you look at the role the church has played and continues to play in the life of the community, the pastor and the leadership are heavily involved in the social element or aspects of the life of the parishioner or the visitor. My marriage is in chaos. My kids are acting crazy. My health is not the best. My finances are in shambles. And I'm stressed out. And in the secular world, we call that those services or support services are provided by social workers or case managers. And in a sense, a pastor and his staff, the pastoral staff, in a sense, act as social workers and case managers. It almost begs the question, is that a skill that needs to be further developed among leaders? Because when you look at seminary education, you don't see many degrees in business and leadership. You don't see a divinity's degree in social work, a divinity and degree in human services at all. But yet, the church, no matter the complexion of your church, you're dealing with human services issues. I'll share this and turn it over. In the Black church, those who go to a Black church, they understand what I just said. Like, people are dealing with life and bringing their life circumstances to the church. There are also immigrant pastors who have immigrated to the U.S. who have launched culturally relevant, culturally centered churches that cater to and minister to their home country. And that in and of itself comes with its own challenges, because you're bringing the culture of the motherland to a new country. You may not speak the language of the U.S., which is English. So now you have a language barrier. You have to now go through the process of being a legal citizen, especially in today's time, or at least a legal visitor. Yet, and you want to work, you got to find some place to live. Culturally, in certain cultures that are not American-based, that becomes a social issue. So now that community is taking care of that family who just got off the boat, if you will, from the motherland. And so the church now becomes this human-centered facility. And for those of you wondering, well, that's not business. If you work at a nonprofit, if you operate a nonprofit, nonprofits are businesses too. Because you got to pay bills, you got to pay staff, you got to pay expenses, you got to make sure all your paperwork is in order. It requires you to transact something to get revenue in-house to pay bills and provide services for your clients. The church does the same. However, the transaction is literally one way, which is an appeal made to those in attendance to give and donate for towards the services of the church, man. So I'm gonna throw out there that I think one of the business skills that are necessary is how to run a nonprofit, how to be a good social worker, how to be a good case manager, or a good referral service.
Yeah, again, all these things that we have been talking about over the last couple of series is everything that today's church should be doing. But I believe that today's church, the hands are tied because, number one, you don't always have the people who are willing to come in and be a part of the process of help. Everyone wants the handout, but nobody wants to be the process of help. So who are you helping? We want help, but who are you helping? Who are you willing to help? And then when you get your help, do you stay? Do you stick around? Or were you there just to get your help and then you move on to somewhere else? So that's the culture of that has to change. Because again, when you get back to that Acts church that we were talking about before, having all things in common, that means that those people were not selfish in nature. No one was acting selfishly. Everyone was willing to give what little they had. Even though it wasn't much, they were willing to give whatever they had so that the next person didn't have to struggle as much. And then it becomes a full circle, because now when it's your time for you to need, we got your back too. And that's what I think, that's where the culture of the church needs to go.
I believe that in the 21st century, we do have to change the way that we operate, in terms of the pastor being the all-American, if you will, type pastor. I do believe as a pastor, I need to have some understanding and knowledge of multiple areas. And so as a pastor, I have to be willing to read a lot. But also, I have to surround myself with leaders that are skilled in areas that I don't have visibility of or knowledge of as well. Like, for an example, I don't do construction management. Okay. I do believe that the Lord is calling us to live up to our name. You know, we are kingdom builders. So we are looking at the option of building our first location, our physical building. Well, I don't have any skill in that, but my administrative assistant does. That's what he does for a living. So I hand that over to him, and we just stay in communication about, you know, the blueprints, and when you're trying to outfit it, you know, well, how much that is that going to cost if we put this a part of the initial plan? You know, what's the cost per square footage and all that? And I'm learning from him, but he's skilled in that. The way that the Black church, how we generally function is that the pastor has to be the project manager. He has to be a construction manager. He has to be a financial manager. He has to be a psychiatrist. He also has to be a health guru, even if he don't follow it. You know, he has to be a marriage counselor. He has to be a Bible teacher. Okay, and he need to learn at least to have some concept of how music is supposed to. So it's supposed to go. And no wonder he's burned out by the time he turns 50.
Yeah.
And no wonder he's been running on fumes for the last 15 years. You know, okay? So that's how we have functioned. And what my prayer has been is I've really kind of broke it up in this. For the natural things, I do need you saved, yes, because you have to operate in integrity when you rep the church. But for the natural things, I need you skilled. Okay? But for the spiritual stuff, I need you gifted. You know, I don't, and if you happen to be gifted and skilled, man, that's man, that's a blessing within itself. But at least on the natural side of things, I need you skilled. Okay? If I got a bunch of people coming in that are victims of sexual abuse, I need you skilled on how to deal with them psychologically. I have some friends of mine that say, man, they kind of, they're perplexed why I'm I'm not pursuing, at the end goal, an MDiv. I said, well, although there is still much to learn from a biblical standpoint, from a theological aspect, which I'm a student of the word. Okay. But I've been blessed to have been preaching for a number of years now. For me, my biggest benefit to my church would be to get a degree in psychology. Because I do have people in my church that have been victims of molestation, that have been victims of rape, that have been substance abuse, addicts and things of that nature, that have gone through abusive relationships. So what's going to really benefit them most? My MDiv or my degree in psychology?
Amen.
So that's kind of how I look at it is that what you don't have knowledge of, you got to surround yourself with people who do, because that's going to help take some of the stress off of you of trying to be everything that you really are not called or really skilled to be, and that you're not good at. I have those that are good at finance. They're good at it. Okay. I have proficient understanding on how to do a budget and all that, but they're good at it. And they have the evidence of showing that they're good at it. So that's what I have them do. They're skilled at it. Okay. But I also have those, my wife, to me, even though I think she's coming more into that knowledge of, that she really is an intercessor. She really is an intercessor. So people may think that I'm just using her as my wife because she's my wife and that's the pastor's wife. No, I believe that she is anointed to be an intercessor in prayer. So on Sunday mornings, babe, I need you to do intercessory prayer. Because that's spiritual. Now, I need you gifted. I need you to shift the atmosphere. Okay, I need you to be able to call out some stuff in the atmosphere that's trying to permeate the worship experience. I need you to go for broke. Okay, I need you to go in, and clear the place out so God can have free reign. Okay, that's gifted. Okay, and so that's how I really function.
And see, one thing that you guys both said that I was taught is that leaders are readers. So when you look at the age that we're in, how do we maximize this age that we're in? No, we can't be everything to everybody. But as the leader, you have to know who you're called to. So I know that my wife and I, we're definitely called to marriage ministry. So we pursue those things to continue to educate as far as counseling, to help other couples, as well as, going from life's experience. So you have to know who you're called to, and then whatever area that is, like study that, focus on that. And then everything else you can touch on, well, like Pastor Matt was saying, like get those people who are gifted in those areas. If you're not the singer, don't get up there trying to sing. Get somebody that's gifted in singing. Get somebody that knows that area of ministry that you need, that that people are going to come for. So the fivefold ministry should be at work in every church. We need somebody to pastor. We need somebody to evangelize. We need a prophet. We need to teach. We need the fivefold ministry in the church. And there are too many churches, like you were saying, the pastor's trying to be the everything to everybody. And yeah, he is burnt out. Mm-hmm. Because he's trying to do too much instead of saying, listen, when they were looking after Judas, they said, look out among you. Get those, point out those people that are God-filled, that are anointed, that we can lay hands on them and put them in place. Mm-hmm. They didn't say, well, we'll just take on the workload. No, they had to get somebody to fill that spot.
So what I'm hearing is one of the important skills pastors need to have in the 21st century is the ability to identify talent, to identify and cultivate talent. The scripture that comes to mind for me is Matthew chapter 4, verse 14 and 19. While walking by the Sea of Galilee, Jesus saw two brothers, Simon, who was called Peter, and Andrew, his brother, casting the net to the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, verse 19, follow me and I will make you fishers of men. And I think that statement speaks to the ability of the pastor to identify talent that's relevant to the kingdom development. It's not enough to put people in position anymore because of their quote faithfulness if they don't have the ability to do what you need them to do. Like, that idea is gone. That idea of having someone moderately talented on the keys, Matt. We're gonna sing a cappella until we find somebody who is capable and competent to tinkle the ivory keys appropriately for God's glory. Because what value does it add to have somebody who is not trained, skilled, diverse? I don't know what other descriptive words you want to use. Someone who can go with the flow, take us to a place, or expand where we are in our worship when they don't know how to leverage the full capacity of the instrument at their fingertips.
Yes.
What good is it to have someone labeled or titled as a preacher who can't study the Word of God in its purest sense? Or who believes that as long as I find keyword searches, I'm doing a good job in teaching, when you never study Greek or Hebrew, or at least you can't do the research to define what those words actually mean, what the scriptural text actually means, and how it applies to the everyday believer in contemporary times.
Rightly dividing
the word of truth. What good is it to have someone over the finances of the church just because they've been your longest term member when they can't get their finances together? No shade. You ain't doing good in your finances. Don't touch the books of the church.
Amen.
Like straight. Because if you can't save money, if you can't pay your bills on time, if you can't do well on your own, what value do you bring to the church? Because now we're going to have to undo your bad decision making,
right,
on a corporation. This time, your bad decisions don't impact you and your family. This impacts a business. Now we got to pay tax penalties, but we're a nonprofit. Not when you conduct that transaction, you're not. Or now we got to pay fines, but we're a church. Not when you make those decisions and you build at that location without the proper permits, you're not. Or we ought to be able to do this because God said do this. Bro, time out. Jesus made it simple. When they said, well, what do we do when it comes to taxes? He went to the fish and pulled out a coin and said, give what is Caesar's to Caesar's. Like, stop playing games, man. Certain transactions you're going to have to pay taxes on because it is a taxable expense. Well, we a church. That's not good enough. Do you know the law? No? Go sit down. Because ultimately, you're going to hurt the corporation in the long run. And it's not enough to say stay in that position because of your faithfulness. Because at the end of the day, on each of our jobs, that's not enough to keep your job. If you don't know what you're doing, you're fired.
Right. Absolutely.
I mean, to your point, the African American church, Black church, has been the only institution, if you will, where you don't have to be skilled to do nothing.
No, to be a leader.
To be a leader.
You can become a leader with no work, no effort, no study, no certifications.
As long as you obey leadership, and as long as you come to church and you're faithful, we're going to give you a title. And you're so ineffective.
Man.
You know, there has to be a mandate that if you're going to be a leader, to any pastor watching this and later on or what have you, if you are going to be a leader, you have to mandate it for your leaders to be students, lifelong students, for as long as they're in those capacities.
Yes.
All right. the last year, I really reversed it back on my leaders. Now, it is required of me as a pastor, a Kingdom Builders Fellowship, that I am to attend, at least 2 leadership conferences a year. Now when I was joking, a couple years ago, when I said I was semi-retired, before the Lord led me to where I am now, professionally, that was doable. It was doable because, all I really did at that moment was just, I was in school and I was focusing on church work. Okay. So I did. I went to 2. Okay. This year I can really only manage 1, although I will be attending 2, but the second one, I'm more on part of conference planning staff. So I don't really get to involve myself much. But I am going to 1. I'm required to do that. So what I flipped it on them last year and said, okay, you can't go with me if you're not growing. So if you're not growing, we can't go the same direction, because what good is it for me to be going, okay, and I'm growing and I'm trying to come back and to relay or regurgitate what I got, and you don't even connect with it. Okay, so if you're not going with me, you can't grow with me. So y'all gonna have to go to some conferences too.
Yeah, that's kind of what I said yesterday, man. That Amos 3:3. How can 2 walk together unless we be in agree? You got to agree on the destination. If I'm going to conferences and learning, I can't come back and, my wife is an excellent note taker. She can almost listen to this and write down word for word, which each of us are saying.
Yeah.
I don't have that gift. So if I'm going somewhere, you need me to re-speak it to you, you should have been there to get it this time. That's all I'm saying.
Man, and I think you're hitting on something, because Pastor Kev, you highlighted the fact of constantly reading. Man, I've never read so much in my life since I've become an adult, man. The past, 10 years has just been crazy in the amount of reading. And even in recent years, it just continues to pick up the amount of stuff I'm consuming. And it's not just kingdom content, or at least what we consider kingdom content. Matt, you talked about attending leadership conferences, man. In some instances, you can justify attending sales conferences, marketing conferences, because as the chief apostle of your ministry, we can say that you need to be a master salesman. And this is not about, watering down the role of the pastor, right? The role of the pastor is to feed the flock, right? But if you don't know how to digest the content that you're selling, which is salvation through Jesus Christ, and teach it, understand it and teach it in a way that can kind of appeal to the mind of someone who's trying to make a decision not to attend your church, but to accept Christ. This is not about church membership. This is not about padding your pockets. This is about a decision somebody's making about their salvation. If you can't speak the gospel in a way that causes or compels someone to change their ways, which is what we're called to do in 2 Timothy 2:22, peradventure your enemy changes their ways, then what good are you as a preacher? Mm-hmm. The whole role of the pastor, preacher, teacher Paul writes to Timothy about is someone who is studying to show themselves approved, a workman unto God that can work the work without being ashamed. Mm-hmm. Think about those moments you walk up in the mall and you go to a bakery or you go to a Cinnabon store. And they've always, for as long as I can remember, had the clear glass where you can see them making the Cinnabon. Or you go to a pretzel store, they're cutting the yeast and they're rolling it up and they're putting it in the pan and spreading the butter on there, whatever the case may be. And we're gawking at them like, man, look at them make the food, and it comes out of the oven piping hot, and they spread the icing on there. Just because we're staring at them doesn't stop them from doing what they do. They're still working the process. Right? They're not ashamed of the process, because the process yields a product that's piping hot, that tastes good, that will end up in my belly in a little while. And just because of people staring at you doesn't mean you forego the process, which is why Paul said you need to be competent enough to work the ministry, teach the gospel, and not be ashamed. Not because you're ashamed of Christ. No, you need not be ashamed of your capacity and your ability to do the work. The only time somebody's ashamed when you're looking at them is because they don't know what they're doing. Let that sit there for a moment. The only people that don't want you looking at what they're doing is because they don't know how to do their job. When the boss come around, they all of a sudden look busy. Y'all know those folks? Right. Those y'all watching me online, y'all know those folks?
Yeah, I call them. They look guilty. I said, what you not doing?
The guilty folks. All of a sudden, they look super busy when the pastor come around. Right. Those people who don't get nothing done on time, can't turn projects in on time. Those are people that don't want you to looking at them. Paul is saying when you feel that way, you're ashamed. You're ashamed because you have no skill. At the end of the day, man, we are called to be skilled contributors to the kingdom and its growth. Paul was an attorney. He was a businessman. He was a tent maker, so he understood textiles. And he was a preacher and was ashamed of none of it. Again, ashamed has nothing to do with how proud you are. It's all about your ability to do your work and not feel inferior because of people looking at you or the people attacking you or the people talking about you. Where you at? You ain't as strong as you are when you write these letters. He wasn't ashamed.
But see, and we have to understand that, you know, when he talks about these are the things that accompany salvation, we do need to go to financial seminars because these are the things that people, once you get saved, now your life starts. But how do you manage your Christian life if you couldn't even manage your life in the world?
Speak, man.
So now you need financial help. So if there's a financial seminar or webinar or something, take advantage of it. And that goes for pastors too. Because guess what? There are a lot of pastors out there who don't know how to manage their finances. That's why certain churches are failing. That's why certain churches are closing. Because you haven't taken the time. You think that everything you need to do needs to be kingdom minded. But no, you take the kingdom into whatever environment that you're going into.
What did Jesus pray? Don't take them out of this world, but keep them while they're in this world because somebody has to be like, look, man, Jesus taught in Luke 16. I can read this whole passage. This is about the dishonest manager. He said, and I tell you, make friends for yourselves by means of unrighteous wealth, so that when you fall, or when it fails, rather, when your money fails, they will receive you in eternal dwellings. One who is faithful in very little is also faithful in much. One who's dishonest in very little is dishonest in much. And if you can't take care of unrighteous wealth, how can we entrust you with true riches? The church's job is to equip folk to live kingdom life in the marketplace.
Yes.
If you can't perform well on your job, why should I trust you with true riches that belong to the kingdom? Because the resources of the church, while few, are blessed. And if I let your grimy, lazy, unfruitful hands on the few resources that we got, think about the talents, the servants with the one talent. Jesus said, dude, you couldn't even invest it. You couldn't take it to the banker. If I let you touch the few precious resources of the church, what's going to happen to it?
Right. All right, so you touched on something that one of my favorite scriptures. Oh my goodness. He talks about the sluggard. Come on, help me out, brothers. He talks about it. He said, look at the sluggard.
Proverbs.
He said, I went by the vineyard of the sluggard.
Yep.
And behold, it was overgrown with nettles and weeds. And
yes.
He said, the wall was broken down. And he said, I looked at it and I pondered. He said, and I had this realization. He said, a little sleep, a little slumber.
It's Proverbs
24:31.
I know it was in 24. I'm flipping so fast.
It's at the end, the last 4 or 5 verses.
because I know I'm supposed to have it highlighted. There it is.
Yeah, man.
He said, but I went by the field of the lazy man and by the vineyard of the man devoid of understanding.
Yeah.
And there it was, all overgrown with thorns. The surface was covered with nettles. The stone wall was broken down. When I saw it, I considered it well. I looked on it and received instruction.
Yeah.
He's a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest. So shall your poverty come like a prowler, and your need like an armed man.
Man, listen. That's the word of the Lord.
Yes. And I mean,
You feel your help, sir.
Man, yes, look. See, this is where he says, people are so devoid of understanding. Why is it that you think you don't need to take care of your personal business? And if you can't take care of that, like Will was saying, how can you be entrusted to run any aspect of the church?
Yeah.
You can't.
The reality is God promotes those who handle business. Okay? You don't really grow into, as we call it here in America, you don't grow into a mega church if you don't know how to handle business. Okay? Because your preaching ability and your charismatic persona is only going to go but so far.
So far.
Okay? You're going to have to be able to know how to manage and even know how to invest.
Yes.
I met one bishop and he was sharing with me about how their church was able to accomplish so much. And they weren't a large congregation, maybe about 200 or so people, whatnot. But he says, that they invest, some of what the church has, into stocks and stuff like that. He's like, so when we needed to build a youth center, a pretty, decent youth center, we looked at it and said, okay, can we take it out of what we have? Do we match what the people raise? Or what do we have within our investment that we're willing to cash out to make this happen? Now, you don't hear many, AA churches or African American churches, okay, that says, well, we have stocks and stuff like that. We got so many other stocks that we have options. Either we look at it, can we pay for it out of our own pocket and still be okay? Or do we say, listen, we need you all to invest in this vision and whatever you raise, we'll match that, okay? Or do we just say, no, we just take it from the stocks, cash it out? That is no burden on nobody, right? Because we still got enough resources that it's okay. And we can reinvest it again somewhere else. And that's where I'm striving to go for KB, is that we have options because we consider the ant.
Yes.
Say it.
Oh, sluggard.
Say it.
We consider the ant. Okay? We Jesus says, make friends with the what did he say? Make friends with the
people with unrighteous means.
Yeah, with unrighteous means. Now he wasn't talking about fellowship. He was talking about business network,
business partnerships. That whole section.
Yeah, you learn from them.
Yes,
you learn from them, so that as you learn from them, because now what you're going to learn from them is you're going to flip it and actually use it for righteous means, and that's where the multiplication comes in. That
Man,
That's what the blessing.
Let's talk about this. Like, don't beat around it. Let's talk about this. That chapter in Luke 16, man. Jesus criticizes the believer. He actually said, let me just pull this up because I was getting ready to go back to the talents real quick because you were talking about the stocks. I'm going to hit that in a minute. Okay, so the King James version like this. The Lord commanded the unjust steward because he had done wisely, for the children of this world are in their the children of this world are in their generation wiser than the children of light. And when I read that, it said to me that believers can be some of the most gullible, stupid people on the face of this earth, because we say, oh, I don't want to associate with so-and-so and so-and-so, or I'm about to lose my job, but you're just going to sit there and take it. If you read this whole entire chapter, this guy made a business calculation and said, I'm not made out to beg or dig ditches. I'm too pretty for this. You know what? let me cut a deal. And if y'all trying to follow us on scripture, this is Luke 16:3. I'm too pretty for this. Let me cut a deal. And he resolved to make strategic decisions. How have you ever got fired and your boss told you that, you know what, you're smart?
Yeah.
Did that happen to anybody? And so raise your hand, because I've never got fired and somebody said, you know what? I like the way you handled this situation. This dude got fired, struck up a deal with all his CEO's debtors. And the dude said, dude, you've done wisely.
Mm-hmm.
Because the business transaction, if you do an analysis, and I wrote about this in my book, Sustainable, go get it right now, How to Sustain Your Nonprofit Faith-Based Organization. It simply meant that he knew when they struck up deals to deal in bushels of wheat and fruit and etc. and oil, they bought it cheap and sold it high. And what was owed to the manager was nothing but interest on the principal. Slap your neighbor and tell him it's only interest. Man, when he negotiated the interest down, he cleared the debt and put money back on his pocket. And any investor, any real business owner knows, man, some money is better than no money. Money sitting on a shelf and product and merch is no money. It's dead money. I don't know, man. Well, let me, I guess while y'all sitting on that, let me tell you this, Matthew 25, he talked about the servants with the talents. This is the part that got me. Matthew 25, 15, 16. To one he gave 5 talents, to another he gave 2, to another he gave 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. He who had received 5 talents went at once and traded with them. And the one who had 2 talents, verse 17, gained 2 more.
Let me pause you right there. Because if you notice, it said he gave them talents,
yes,
according to their what?
Ability.
He already knew who had the ability to produce.
Yeah.
Gain or trade. Figure it out.
He already knew.
Yep.
And just like he knew the one that had the 1 never had the capacity to even duplicate the 1.
The old faithful deacon that with no skill set.
But we keep wanting to put him up.
He's the head deacon.
Put him in position.
He's the chief actor,
man. So what you're really doing is you're setting him up to fail.
And setting up your business to fail.
Yeah.
But you set up your church to fail.
As the Lord said, you got to be faithful. No, it says, no, what the Bible says, for those of you who like to quote scripture, that it's required of a steward to be found faithful. You leave the words out, okay? And that's why you keep letting Deacon Odell, okay, get up there and do the crazy stuff, because you said the Bible says it's required of a man to be found faithful. No, it's required of a steward to be found faithful.
Now, I have an Uncle Odell. If you're watching this, he's not talking about you.
I'm going to tell you, all y'all pastors and church leaders, if God calls you home early and you got Deacon Odell over the finances and he has no skill set,
and get up.
and the church wants to take its time finding its new pastor, beware. That church, that building, that congregation might not be around much longer than when you were there. There are plenty of churches that have fell into the hands of unqualified deacons and have went belly up.
Yeah, but let's go ahead with this now, because look how Jesus addressed the guy with the one talent, and here's where people think that, you know, now we know Jesus is loving, amen. Jesus is loving, Jesus is kind. But look at what Jesus said. He said, "You wicked and lazy servant."
What verse you in?
This is verse 26. 25, 26. But his Lord answered and said to him, "You wicked and lazy servant. You knew that I reap where I have not sown." See, and now we go and call Deacon Odell.
Jesus said it.
Because you messed up the finances. You wicked and lazy servant. Woo. Man, people get offended and leave the church.
But don't forget verse 27. What'd you say, Matt?
You would go viral.
Man.
Yes.
Don't forget verse 27. You should have or could have invested the money with the bankers, and at my coming, I should have received what was my own interest.
Yes.
At a minimum.
Take it and give it to somebody that's more deserving.
This is no different when oh God. I did a podcast late last year. It's called Chicken Dinners.
Mm-hmm.
I see you laughing, Matt. and I postulated, I hypothesized rather, that if you made $6,000 a month in chicken dinners, but it costs you $5,000 to operate it because you got to buy supplies, you got to buy chicken, you got to buy the foam plates, you got to buy the silverware, and you got to pay utilities. Was that $1,000 profit worth it?
Nope.
Oh, by the way, we got the church to donate. Yeah, they donated. Did they still give an offering the same way?
Nope. I guarantee you they will not.
So either I'm going to buy this chicken or I'm going to get my tithe.
Right. You can't have both.
Bro. I'm not doing both.
Bro. And at the end of the day, you could have taken the tithe or the investment or the additional giving and made more profit than the time you spent cooking chicken dinners. We have to become more intelligent, like the servant with the 5 talents and the 2 talents, to trade and to add to our gifts with interest.
Mm-hmm.
There is no excuse.
I'm going to say this, and I hear my children calling. my wife is in discipleship class, so I hear them calling.
Yeah.
Why could the one with the 5 multiply it?
Why?
Was he really just that good? Or did he understand the value of what he had in his hand?
Him and the one with the 2. But it was all about the ability that they had to do that.
They multiplied because they understood the value of what was in their hand, because they had a level of intelligence to know that this ain't nothing to play with. This is serious. And I have been entrusted to give a return or to receive a return on what's been invested in me. The person that had the 1 that did nothing with it didn't understand the value.
And I take you a step further. They understood the value that they had in their hand, but they also valued the one that gave it.
Exactly. And I was going to go there too.
Okay. I'm going to sit back and shut up.
He didn't understand the value, and he didn't honor the person that gave it to him. See, you're sabotaging your success as a pastor when you got people on your team that don't value the vision and they don't honor the visionary.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you got a bunch of people that's around you that can't do nothing for you, and they can't help the church. Okay? And you want to say the enemy is attacking you? No, brother, it's an inside job.
It's an inside. That's a perfect way to end.
Inside man, yes.
We'll see y'all next month.
Amen.
Oh man, I ain't add nothing to that.